So before I say before when the client want to log into server, what the client need to do? The client need to have the username and also the password to log into the server. If without the Kerberos for authentication, how we make sure that the client is the person who have the access to the server? How we make sure that the client is not the intruder? Because the intruder can hack to the client and get a username and password to log into the server. In this case, we cannot authenticate the client. We cannot make sure that the client is the staff from the company so that they come out this Kerberos to authenticate the client. So you can see from here, the first problem before the Kerberos is user impersonation. So a user can pretend to be another user. As I said just now, when the client can be anyone with the correct username and password to log into the server. So the intruder or other user can be impersonated to become the user. Okay, this is the first problem. The second problem is network address impersonation. The client can we change their network address, can change their IP address. So how we prove that the network address is the actual network address? This is the problem before we use the Kerberos server. And the third problem is there may be attacks, for example, eavesdropping and replay attacks or DOS attacks. For example, eavesdropping, for example, a client, when you key the username and password to access to the server, there may be an attacker there. So they will capture everything and replay the attacks, key the username and password and access to the server. So this is the three problem before you use the Kerberos server. So what is Kerberos? So Kerberos is actually a centralized authentication server. When the client want to access to the server, the client need to authenticate and get the ticket from this Kerberos. So this Kerberos inside got two types of server. One is known as authentication server and another one is known as ticket granting server. So the objective is a centralized authentication server to authenticate user to server and server to user. This covers using the conventional encryption techniques, means that symmetric encryption. Symmetric encryption using secret key. Secret key means that encrypt and decrypt using the same key. So this covers using the conventional encryption. And there's a two version. One is version 4, another one is version 5. And this version 4 is using this DES. If you still remember the DES algorithm. It's a symmetric encryption algorithm. So this is actually, this protocol is actually come out from this MIT University. So there's three kinds of server for this Kerberos. One is known as AS, also known as authentication server. Another one is known as TGS. It's a ticket granting server, and this is an application server. So this AS is actually will issue the long lifetime tickets, and ticket granting server will issue the short lifetime tickets, and server is actually provide you the different services. What does it mean long lifetime tickets and short lifetime tickets? Later I will come back to this. Okay, this is a short form. When you go through the slides, it's actually using the short form. If you don't understand the short form, then you can refer to this slide. C stands for clients, AS stands for authentication server, and so on. So this is a simple authentication step. It's actually same with this diagram. I will explain first. So the first step, client. This is client, want to access to the server. First step is client will send the request to authentication server. Client. Client. Can you see this slide? Client. This is client. Client want to access to the server. There's a Kerberos server. Inside this Kerberos server, there's an authentication server and ticket granting server. The first step is user will log on to the computer and request the TGS ticket from the authentication server. When sending out the request, it actually consists is the client ID, client password, and also the server ID. So when the client wants to request this TGS ticket, it actually consists of the client ID, password, and also the server ID. So the client will send this thing to the authentication server to get the ticket granting ticket. So after authentication server get the information, the authentication server will check from their database. This is their database. So all the client might register with the server. And also the server also must register with the Kerberos server. So all their information is already in this database. Consists the user, database have the user ID, and also the user hash password. The password I already hashed it. So when the client sends this information, the authentication server will check client ID, password, and also the server ID from their database. It is okay or not? If yes, then the authentication server will send the TGS ticket and session key to the client. TGS ticket is actually ticket granting server ticket. And also the session key to the client. And this thing is actually encrypted with the client password. When client receives it, client PC will pop up. You need to key in the username and password. You need to key in the password to decrypt this ticket and also the session key. After decrypt it, then the client will send this TGS ticket and authenticator to the ticket granting server. After ticket granting server verify everything, yes, the ticket is valid ticket. Then ticket granting server will send the service tickets or server tickets plus session key to the client. Then client have the ticket and send it to the server. Server verify the ticket is matched, then grant the access to the client. Client now can access to the server. Okay. So they come out this Kerberos server to authenticate the client and give access to the client to access to the server. So you can prevent the type of attack, for example, impersonating. Okay, the client cannot be another person to access to the server. So from here you can actually the same thing. Step 1, client request send a request to authentication server. So in the request it consists the client ID, password, and server ID. After authentication server receive, it will check in their database. Then it will verify. If yes, the client detail is in the database, everything is matched, then the authentication server will send the tickets to the client. Tickets plus key. So in the ticket it actually consists of the client ID and the client password, and all this is encrypted with the password. After receiving it, then the client will send it to the this is actually the last step. Client can access to the server. They need just provide the tickets and the client ID. Then they can access to the server. This is the problem axis. If too long repeatedly ask for the password, if too long greater opportunity to repeat. What does it mean? If too short repeatedly ask for the password. Means that ticket granting server will provide the ticket to the client to access to the server. Okay, the ticket granting server will provide the tickets to the client to access to the server. If the lifetime for the ticket is too short, means that if only maybe 10 seconds, the client only can use the ticket access to the server for 10 seconds. If more than 10 seconds, you need to request again the password to access to the server. So this is one of the problems. If the ticket lifetime is too short, the client need to keep on repeating asking the password to access to the server. Okay. This is the first problem. If too short, you need to repeatedly ask for the password. If too long, means that maybe you can use the ticket to access to the server maybe 5 months. This may be 10 seconds. If too long, there is a greater opportunity for the replay attack. So what does it mean? Because ticket granting server will provide you the ticket. If the ticket is valid is too long, the intruder may copy the ticket or get the ticket and access to the server. They use your tickets to access to the server. So if too long, there may be a replay attack happen. So you can see authentication server. Authentication server is here. First, you need to request from the authentication server. So authentication server is actually like the passport. It will show your identity and who you are. Then the authentication server will check your identity is okay or not. If okay, then they will give you the ticket granting server tickets. So the ticket granting server tickets, they will provide you the ticket. The ticket is like a visa. So it will specify who is allowed to entry and for how many days. So you will specify who is allowed to access to the server and how long you can access to the server. So this is the same thing when a client requests the access from the authentication server. It actually consists of client ID, client password, and also the timestamp. Okay. This is also the same thing. Client requests authentication server, verified, then send to the client. Then client requests TPS. After that, the last one is access to the server. This is actually the same thing from this one, and this one is the same thing. If you just read this, understand this, then you can ignore this one. Understand now? So what is the function of Kerberos? It's for authentication purpose. Okay. So another part is request for service in another ring. So just now we see everything is in one ring. Okay. This is the example of two rings. What does it mean? For example, you got a hr.com. For example, you are from the hr.com, but you want to request services, you want to access the services in the cs.com. So it's actually in different environments. So if it's a different domains or different environments, what you need to do is, in the one ring, it consists of client and also the Kerberos server. But your server is in another ring. That is the same process. The client will request the ticket to access to the ticket granting server from the authentication server. Then authentication server will check everything, verify, then will send back the ticket to the client plus the key. After that, client gets the key and also the ticket, then it will send it to the ticket granting server. Ticket granting server will verify everything and give the tickets for remote TPS, not the ticket to access to the server, because the server is in different ring. Therefore, this TPS only gives the ticket for remote TPS. Then the client send the remote ticket to the another ring TPS, verify everything, then only give the remote ticket for the client. Now only the client can access to the server. Okay. So in this, you can, the example is, for example, you are from the Thai UMP. So all your detail is listed in the Thai UMP database. For example, this is YY University. So all your information you will authenticate, you will verify for this Thai UMP database authentication server. And then this TPS only provide you the TPS tickets. But you want to access to the GSC, for example, GSC tickets. So you cannot use these tickets to access to the server. You need to request again from another ring TPS to get the GSC ticket. Only now you can enter to the server. Okay. So because they are from different environments, so you need verify, get a ticket from another ring. This is not in the version 4. This is only for the Kerberos version 5. So this is the explanation. It's the same thing what I explained just now. this Kerberos. Okay, so for this one, no need. Just the definition for the Kerberos version 5, developed in year what, and so on. So the difference between version 4 and version 5, one of the difference is version 4 is restricted to a single ring only. Version 5 is allowed inter-ring authentication. This is one of the difference. This slide is actually did not list down what is the difference. So this one only. So one of the difference is one is single ring, one is inter-ring authentication. Okay, if you want to use this Kerberos, you need to have this KDC on your network. And you need to have this Kerberos application running on all participating systems. All the client, all the server must run this Kerberos application. Any question for this Kerberos? So Kerberos, how many servers in the Kerberos server? 2 servers. One is authentication server, another one is ticket granting server. What is the function of authentication server? Is to check your identity and also the password. Everything valid, then they will give you the ticket granting server ticket for you to send the ticket to ticket granting server to request the ticket to access to the server. Okay. So ticket granting server is actually provide you the ticket. Check all the details, valid, then they will provide you the ticket, then you can access to the server. This is Kerberos. If no question, then I will go to the next. Public key certificate X.509. You understand or not, Kerberos? Can or not? Huh? If I ask you to draw out and explain, can or not? You can just you can imagine client want to access to the server, then you draw out client, server, and KDC. So inside KDC got authentication server and ticket granting server. Then all 2 lines, request and then give back the ticket, and then request again to the TTS and reply again, then only can access to the server reply again. Later we proceed to the next part first. Okay, public key means what? Public key. In the asymmetric encryption, you need the public key for encryption. Still remember? Asymmetric. You need 2 keys. One is known as public key, another one is known as private key. Public key is encrypt, private key is to decrypt. So the public key is available openly to anyone. Anyone here can use the public key to encrypt and send the document to you. Okay. So you encrypt it. You plan to send a message to Alice. And what the Bob do is, Bob will use the Alice public key to encrypt the document and send the document to Alice. But now the problem is how you prove that this public key is belong to Alice. Why it is important that we prove this key is belong to the receiver. If the key is not belong to Alice, for example, bad guy here. If Bob using this bad guy key and then sending the document to Alice. When the bad guy takes the document, the bad guy can decrypt it using the bad guy private key to read the document. So that's why we want to prove the public keys belong to who. So how are we going to prove? Have you seen the VeriSign before? Have you heard this word before? How are we going to prove? So we can prove by using this certificate. Can you see this certificate? So this certificate is actually Alice registered to get the public key. And this certificate is signed by this certificate authority. Then we can prove that this public key is belong to Alice. We're using the certificate to prove that this public key is belong to Alice. So after you can prove that, so what? Feel happy or feel safe and use the Alice public key to encrypt it and send it to Alice, and Alice can decrypt it and read the plain text. After you encrypt, the plain text will convert it into the ciphertext. Means that all the word is not readable, it's not understandable. So what is the certificate? The certificate's name is known as X.509 certificate. X.509 certificate. This is the certificate we can prove the public keys belong to Alice. So this certificate contains the public key of a user and is signed with the private key of certificate authority. This certificate authority is actually a third party. The third party can be trusted. So they will sign on the certificate and prove that this public key belongs to Alice. So it will use, for example, /MIME. This is used in the email for the encryption, and this is used for the HTTP, SSL, and TLS. So RSA is recommended to use this certificate to prove that public key is belong to you. If you still remember what is RSA, RSA is one of the algorithms for asymmetric encryption. Use public key for encryption, private key for decryption. Okay, how the certificate look like? So this is the certificate look like. So it's actually follow the X.509 standard. So the standard already lists down the format for this certificate. So it's like your birth certificate. It will start from your name, followed by the date, and so on. So this is the certificate to prove the public keys belong to you. Okay? So it actually consists of the version, certificate serial number, and so on. No need to memorize all the details inside. So you just need to know there's a certificate. So for this certificate, you can see it got the public key and also digital signature. So this public key is your public key, and the digital signature is actually signed by this certificate authority. So you should sign on the public key to prove that. Any question? For this X.509 authentication services. So what is this X509 certificate? Is to prove the public key is belong to you. You need to register it, and it consists the public key and also the sign from the CA, certificate authority. Certificate authority is a third party, a trusted third party. Can be anyone as long as it is trusted person. So two parts. One is Kerberos, one is X.509. Okay. Still too fast. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah. Still remember this diagram or not?
No.
What is the purpose of this diagram?
No.
What is this? The full name? H stand for what?
Hashing.
Yeah, hash function with one is private key, one is public key. What does it mean? With public key encryption. So still remember how it works? You got the message. How you authenticate the message? So you will go through this hash function to generate the hash value. And then this hash value will encrypt it with a private key. Okay, your friend asks, why sometimes encrypt with a private key, why sometimes encrypt with a public key? So what is the difference? If you notice that encryption, you will use public key to encrypt and private key for decrypt. For authentication, for example, this hash function, you will use the private key to encrypt and public key to decrypt. Hash function is for authentication, it's not at confidentiality. You did not encrypt the message. Okay, you just authenticate the message. Can you see the two difference? One is confidentiality. One is authentication. What is the difference between confidentiality and authentication? Confidentiality means that only authorized user can access it. Means that you need to encrypt the document. Only the user with the correct username and password can access it. This is encryption. Encryption, you can make sure confidentiality. So authentication, for example, this hash function, how you make sure that the message is belong to you? Or how you make sure that the message is not modified by other people? So you can prove by using this hash function. So this hash function is actually your message, you will go through this hash function to generate the hash code. This hash code is encrypted and attached to the message. Okay? If the hash value is 1, 2, 3, you send it to your friend. Your friend will decrypt the hash value 1, 2, 3 here, and then your friend also will using the message and go through the hash function to generate the hash value. If 1, 2, 3 match means that nobody has modified the message, or the message is come from you, not other people. Okay? If let's say suddenly you get the code is 2, 3, 4, not match right, means that there's a possible intruder have modified your message, or the message is not come from the sender and come from other people. Okay? So this is the digital signature. Okay, all this is the same thing, just message. You want to go through one by one? So digital signature signature will provide the ability to verify the author. So we can verify that author is come from the author and the date, stamp of the signature, authenticate the message content, means that nobody has modified the message. This is what the digital signature is able to provide to you. And also be verified by third party to resolve the disputes. So hence include authentication function with the additional capability. So for example, if the question asks you or give you the scenario, then you need to differentiate. You want to use confidentiality of authentication. And what is the example for the confidentiality? And what is the algorithm used for the authentication? So you need to link. If I just give you the scenario. For example, blah, 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 how I want to prove the authentication. How I want to provide the authentication system for the user. So you can give the example, you can use this digital signature, hash function, message authentication.
Yes.
Any question? So digital signature, Kerberos, and also the X.509 certificates. Any question? Okay, just now I mentioned certificate authority. So what is certificate authority? What is certificate authority? It will sign on the certificate, right? X.509 certificate have the public key and also the signature. So this signature is signed by this CA. CA is actually a third party, the trusted third party. So from here, anyone can be the CA, but must be trusted. It is a trusted third party which trusted by the user community. So CA is actually to prove the system or the public key that claim to be true. For example, VeriSign. So they actually prove the public key that claim to be true. So it belongs to Alice, the public key, then they will sign on it. This is a CA job. CA is anyone, the third party, who can be trusted. So they will check, they will claim to be true. Any question? CA? Next, the revocation of certificate. What does it mean? The certificate is not valid anymore. Why? What is the possible problem? So the first point here, maybe the certificate have a period of validity, like your passport lah. You got a period of validity, and may need to revoke before expired. Why? Before expired. Before expired, they will not. They say that this certificate is not valid anymore, right? One of the reason is user private key is compromised. No? Because we prove the public key, right? If the private key is compromised, then we need to cancel. The certificate is not valid anymore. Or the user is no longer certified by this CA, or the CA certificate is compromised. So this is the three reasons why they will revoke before the expired date. This one no need. This one just that say that a user maybe with only one identity can access to multiple organizations. Organization account. So there's actually it's a middle person to manage everything. So this one, for example, the single sign-on. Have you heard of single sign-on before? Single sign-on, for example, you have multiple accounts, only use one identity to log in to all the different server and so on. So this is, you can see some of the services when you need to create a lot of accounts, it is hard for you to manage it. So for example, payment, you need to go account by account. It's a lot of work you need to do. So you need to have a centralized to manage all the things. For example, bill, you will combine all the bill together and you just pay for one bill. Okay. So this one no need lah. All this no need. No need, no need. Okay, today what you learn? Today what you learn? Kerberos, okay? What is Kerberos? Authenticate, okay. Okay. How you prove that public keys belong to Alice? Certificate. What is the certificate name? S.509 certificate. How you verify? Who going to verify the certificates? Okay, CA. Any question you want to ask me? If no, today I already try my best to slow down.
Never mind. Thank you, miss.
You can go through the slides. If you don't understand it fast, you can let me know. Okay? Sign in your attendance before you leave. Thank you, class.